What's up, guys? Welcome back to Red Heart Ranch. Today I want to tell you a little bit about sourdough. I've been getting a lot of questions. It's winter time. Everybody's getting into that inside groove, ready to bake, stuff like that. So I wanted to kind of show or tell you about how I work through sourdough. Sourdough is very daunting. It's very, sensitive, if you will. There are a lot of people that don't know how to do it, so the thought of starting it is very scary. Now, your best bet is if you can get a starter off someone, that's going to be the easiest way to go about it, because trying to start your own, I've never done it, so I can't speak to how easy or difficult it is. I got a starter off of a friend, and I have given it out to a few people, but even the people that I've given it out to are very uncomfortable with where to begin. So the way that I do things, I always try to work backwards. I work a full-time job. I'm a mom of two. We have very busy lives. Both of my kids are in sports, so we're moving all the time. So to spend a day in the kitchen doing lifts and folds and this and that, I just don't have that kind of time. I wish I did, and maybe I can score a Saturday or a Sunday every now and then where I can make that happen. But 9 times out of 10, I don't have that kind of time. I have to do it and leave it sit, or be able to walk away from it so that I can do something else. Because the time's just there's not enough hours in the day. So the way that I do sourdough is I find an easy recipe that either has big gaps or that can be done in a small amount of time. So when you have your sourdough, right now, this is my sourdough that I just pulled out of the refrigerator, and it is not bubbly. It's just runny and slimy and smells delicious. Well, my camera card was full, so had to get a new one. Anyway, so this is the sourdough I just pulled out of the fridge. It's all runny, it's not fed. This is what someone would consider discard, okay? Now, when you're looking at recipes, your recipes will tell you if it's an active starter, or if it just says starter, that's a fed starter. If it will specifically say discard if the recipe calls for discard. So I don't like to throw away my discard. You can, but I don't like to. So I will intentionally find recipes. That's my dog's chicken. Hey, get your chicken out of here. I'm trying to shoot a video. Let me see it. Get it. Anyway, I will intentionally try to find recipes to make with my discard. The other day I made chocolate graham crackers. They were delicious. I didn't roll them out thin enough, so they were like chocolate brownie crackers, but they were still really good. Tonight, in order to get rid of this, because this is a lot of discard. You can see how far up this is, and this is a big jar. I don't know how big it is. I'll find out, and then I'll make sure I link this jar in the description for you. But I'm going to make pizza with this discard tonight, because I don't want to waste it all. I worked hard and bought all that flour and put it all in here and fed it and used it, and this is useful material. I can use this for something. I try really hard not to waste anything. So I'm going to use this discard instead of throwing it away for something. You can make pancakes. There's all kinds of recipes for discard. But tonight, I'm going to be making pizza. So I'm going to take this discard. I'm going to heat up my cast iron skillet, put a little bit of oil in it, and then I'm going to heat it in the oven, pull it out of the oven, put my discard in the hot cast iron skillet, run it around the sides to make a little bit of an edge, let it cook, get all crunchy, bring it back out, put my ingredients on my pizza, put it back in the oven, melt my cheese, and I'm done. So it's a super fast and easy meal, and it uses up a lot of my discard. So then whenever I go to feed again, now when I go to feed, I always wait until I'm going to use a recipe, and I try to make sure that I make something with a fed sourdough at least once a week. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but I try to at least make sure that Dorothy gets fed once a week. So, tonight I'm gonna make pizza. Tomorrow is Friday. I always go with my recipes and work backwards. So if I know that I want bread for dinner Friday evening, I'm going to feed this sourdough tonight. So the way that I do the recipe that I use for sandwich bread, which I will link down below, is I will feed my sourdough starter tonight. And whenever I feed it, I always do equal parts flour and water. And I always make sure for every gram of starter that's in my container, each gram gets a bite to eat and a drink. So if I have, at minimum, so if I have 100 grams in here, now this is obviously more than 100 grams, but if I have 100 grams in here, or let's say I have a cup of starter in here, I will add a cup of flour and a cup of water, equal parts. Or if I know that I'm going to be doing a boatload of baking and I'm going to make a boatload of recipes, if I only have a cup of starter in here, I can still add more, and that starter will eat all of that, but it has to have at least enough for each gram to get a bite of food and a drink of water. That's how I have to remember it in my head, because sometimes my squirrel brain gets a little crazy and I have to remember things in, you know, survival analogies, I guess. So, tonight I will feed my starter. Tomorrow morning, before I go to work, this recipe is super easy. I'll stick it in my KitchenAid, mix it all up, leave it in the bowl with a wet towel, tea towel over top, and let it proof all day while I'm at work. When I get home from work, I will divide it into the 2 loaves and leave it sit under a wet tea towel in my loaf pans for like an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe, while I cook dinner. I'll throw it in the oven, it cooks for 45 minutes, and it's done. Like, we can have that bread with dinner that night. The kicker is whenever you're doing sourdough, it always takes time. It takes a longer amount of time to rise or proof than a normal yeast bread does. So you have to account for that time in your schedule. So if I know I want to have it for dinner, I have to have 45 minutes for it to cook. So go back 45 minutes. I have to have 2 hours for it to sit in the loaf pans. I have to have 8 hours for it to proof. And then I have to have enough time for my starter to be fed, which usually, like 9 times out of 10, if I'm going to use a recipe that requires active starter, I always give it like 12 hours. Now, I don't know the science behind that, and every starter might be different. So, watch it a couple different people. I know that Lisa on Farmhouse on Boone, her sourdough recipes are fire. Amazing. And she pretty much makes it easy enough that anybody can follow. I don't know all the science behind all of this. I just know what I do. But I always know that for me, if I know that I'm going to use this starter the next morning, I'm going to feed it the night before. Or if I know that I need it to start my recipe at 6 p.m., I'm going to get up and the first thing I do in the morning is I'm going to feed it. I'm not going to feed it and then 2 hours later try to use it, because it's not going to be risen, it's not going to be bubbly, it's not going to be, you know, the full, shake my camera, it's not going to be as full as I will want it to be. So, I feel like it sounds, maybe I'm making it sound more complicated than what it is, but it's not that difficult if you just work backwards, and even if you start one recipe at a time. Learn how to make a loaf of bread. Or learn how to make the sourdough pizza in the cast iron skillet with just the discard, and then feed it and watch it rise, see how long it takes, watch it come back down, and go from there. The first thing I ever made is pancakes with my sourdough starter that I think she may have just turned 14. So a 14-year-old little girl taught me how to make sourdough pancakes. So that was the first thing that I learned. I learned how to make that, and then I went to focaccia, and then I went to bread, and now I'm learning with the pizza and the graham crackers and all this other stuff I'm learning how to do now. But it just start with one thing, and you don't have to have a jar this size. You can have a jar this size. You can have a quart-sized jar. You can have whatever you think that you're going to need. Just make sure you give yourself enough room, you know, I would probably use a quart-sized jar. I probably wouldn't use this, but just enough room that you can have your start in there, feed it double what it's supposed to be, and then it will rise and eat and get all bubbly to double that size. It can be simple. It just takes a little bit of a learning curve. So my goal is to get a couple more videos out to you, and maybe, you know, some showing you how to do this stuff. It's really hard with my work schedule, but hopefully this weekend we can kind of make something together. So I will do my best to get that out to you, and I hope you come back. I hope you watch, and thanks for learning with us, and we'll see you next time.